Hey guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this week's ukulele lesson, Matt's going to be teaching you how to play Over the River and Through the Woods. Now this is one of those classic Thanksgiving songs, and I have to say there's not a ton of Thanksgiving songs that come to mind like there are Christmas songs or Hanukkah songs. There are so many more for the other holidays, but for Thanksgiving there doesn't seem to be too many that I at least can think of. But this is the go-to one for me. It's the one that I've always loved the most. And rightfully so. The melody of this tune is just an absolute joy. Now, as far as this arrangement, you could probably guess from the performance that it is heavy on the triplet strum. Now, if you've never done the triplet strum before, we have a couple lessons that I'm going to link here and in the description box below that's going to teach you how to do the technique step by step. So be sure to know how to do it before you jump into this lesson. That will set you up for success with playing this song. So that's going to be the big takeaway with this lesson, is you get to work on the triplet strum technique. Now, with that in mind, let's take a step back. Let's talk about the lesson. So in this video, Matt's going to be teaching you how to play the entire tune. But if you do want to get the tabs to print off and follow along with, that's going to be available at this link right here. Or you can go to the site, rockclass101.com, do a search for the song's name. Now also on that page will be the really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer. Now this is a great feature where you can hit play, you can watch the tab scroll across in real time, you can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish. Just a great asset in learning this tune that much easier. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Matt to teach you how to play this. Don't forget to grab the high G ukulele, and I'll catch you at the end of the video.
Hello! In today's video, we're going to be learning a solo high G ukulele arrangement of Over the River and Through the Woods. Now, this uses the triplet strum technique a lot. So if you've never worked on it before, I've got a video that's actually linked here in the description, and check that out because it'll give you a complete rundown of how to do it. But the gist of the technique is, bring the camera down, you're going to take your index finger and you're going to do a down strum, but you're going to leave your thumb up because the thumb is then going to follow through for a second down strum. And then for a final strum back up, you can use either the nail of the thumb or your index finger to bring it back up. The important thing with a triplet is that you get consistency of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And you'll notice that there are 3 total strikes in one down and up motion. As long as you do the technique in some combination of that, you'll be good to go with this tune. But let's go ahead and dive into the first bar. We're going to start with this G chord. Take your index finger, place it here on the 2nd fret of the C string, middle finger here on the 3rd fret of the E, and pinky here on the 5th fret of the A. Now to play this chord, you don't need any more action with the index, but what I want you to do to set up what's coming next is I want you to try to work on barring that index on that 2nd fret of the C, E, and A. We're going to do a triplet here on this first G chord. Pretty straightforward. And then we're going to do another triplet, but we're going to switch chords as we do it. We're going to start with doing a down strum still on that same chord. The second down with the thumb, we're going to take the pinky off. And this is why we needed that bar there. So that gives us the 2 on the A. And that's going to be down with the thumb. Then we're going to come up on 3 of the A, taking this ring finger and collapsing it into the 3rd fret of the A string coming up. So that first measure in time sounds something like this. And the way I'm going to count it is I'm going to count it with 3s. We're in what's called 6/8 timing, which just means it's 2 sets of triplets per measure. So it's going to be something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a little bit of finger gymnastics at first when you're working on this. Feels a little bit like patting your head and rubbing your tummy at the same time. Very normal. Just take it nice and slow. The next bar here, we're going to go and we're going to play that same G chord that we played to start. We're going to do a down strum here. Now you'll notice there's no triplet here with the triplet strum. So now we can just use our index, drive it down on the down strum, and you see that my thumb is following with it because I'm just going to follow this up with an up strum. And that's how we create this sort of sound. It's the same amount of time that these 2 downs would encompass, but it's just the single strike. And then I'm going to come up, and then down again, and then up one more time. So it's basically a little bit of a swing strum down and up. And in time measure 2 should sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And these two measures now together should sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Going into the next set of two measures, we're going to go to this beautiful C chord. Take your middle finger and pinky fingers, which are currently engaged with your E and A strings. Keep them on there. Take the index off and slide these up to 8 with the middle finger and 10 with the pinky. We're going to take that chord and we're going to do a triplet on it. And then we're going to do a down on 9, strip the pinky away while adding the ring finger on. And then we're going to come up on 7, putting the index finger there on 7, then stripping away the ring finger. So that measure in time is something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Going into the fourth measure, we slide back down to our G chord here, the same one that we played in the first measure. We're going to do a down here, and that's going to encompass all 3 beats. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to hit another down, and then an up at the end of the measure. So measure 4 in time sounds something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And measures 3 and 4 together should sound and look something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Going into the fifth measure here, we go to an everyday C chord. There's a lot of right ways you can play this chord. I like to actually just take my middle finger and put it down here onto the 3rd fret of the A string, because then it's going to slide to a G chord after. But you can use your ring finger too. It honestly doesn't matter too much. But with that C chord, we're going to do a triplet there, followed by a down strum, and then an up. So that's that nice little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the sound. And in time should sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Going into the 6th measure, we just slide this finger down and build a G chord. This time though, instead of that G we were playing earlier, an everyday G chord, 0, 2, 3, 2 with our index, ring, and middle fingers here. We're going to do a triplet again, followed by a down and then an up. So the same rhythm that we did there at measure 5. In time, measure 6 should sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the pair of measures here, 5 and 6, should sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Going into the 7th measure here, this is pretty tricky because the way I like to play this D chord is something like this. Now I'm going to show you 2 different options here. The way I like to do it, index finger barred across the 2nd fret on the G, C, and E strings, coming off on the A string. Now I'm going to super zoom in here for a second, okay? So what this looks like is you see how my A string is open? The way I do that is I use the crease of my index finger. I slot that crease into my E string so that I can get the bend for that A string to be open. And the reason I do this is because I can get the open string, but then if I need to close it, like what will happen later in this measure, I can actually just collapse the finger back and forth. So that's how I like to play this. It's a bit challenging though. If you're not comfortable with this, it's totally fine to use 3 fingers, bringing the camera back out a little bit. Just like this, the index, middle, and ring all stack, and then you can bring the pinky in there for 2 on the A too. There's nothing wrong with this. It's just kind of 4 times more work, right? Because there's 4 fingers involved instead of only 1. But whatever you need to do to play it is totally fine. And so what we do to play this now is we're at that D chord. We're going to do a triplet. 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to do a down strum, and then the aforementioned 2 we're going to collapse and come up on. So measure 7 in time is something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And going into the 8th measure here, we're going to play open on that D chord, so open the A string, do a down strum, And then we're going to play another little D chord variation by just taking the pinky and adding it here on the 5th fret of the A string, having the index still barred across 2, and another down. Measure 8, nice and straightforward. It's just those 2 hits. In time, measure 8 sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the 2 measures together of 7 and 8 should sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now from this point we go on to measure 9, and here's what's cool. Measure 9 should look very familiar because it's exactly the same as what we played on measure 1. No variation whatsoever. In time, measure 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So exact same G chord with the collapsing that we did before. And then we go on to measure 10, and guess what? Measure 10 is exactly the same as measure 2. No variation whatsoever. So in time, measure 10 sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the 2 measures together, 9 and 10, should sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Going on to the 11th measure, hey, good news here. This is exactly the same as what we played on measure 3, going up to that same 8 and 10 that we did before. And in time, measure 11 should sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And going into the 12th measure here, it's almost the same, well actually it is exactly the same as measure 4, which is going to be that G chord, and then it's going to be another down, and then an up on it. It's exactly the same as what we played on measure 4. So measure 12 in time, again the same as 4, should sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the 2 measures together, 11 and 12, exactly the same as what we played on 3 and 4, should sound and look something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Going on to measure 13 now. 13 and 14, I think, start a pretty difficult little run, and it also happens to be towards the end of the song before the repeat and then the finale when we finish. We're going to go up to that same C chord up high that we just played a moment ago, that 0, 0, 8, 10, so the middle finger here on 8 of the E string and the pinky finger here on 10 of the A. We're going to do a down here, and then we're going to come up, and then we're going to go down on the 9 with the ring finger there, and then we're going to come up on 7 with the index. So that's very close, very similar to measures 11 and 3, but a little bit different because we're not doing a triplet strum with it. So measure 13 in time should sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Going into the 14th measure, we slide this down, and this is tricky because just like when we did this to this, we got to get comfortable with that slide of the middle finger going down to 3, index coming back over, giving us that 0, 2, 3, 5 G chord. We're going to do it down here. Make sure that you have this bar across the C, E, and A on this particular movement because you're going to then do an up strum on that 0, 2, 3, 2 chord. And here's where it gets really challenging. We're going to then do a down, muting the A string. So you'll see on the tab, the A string's not written. That's because we want to try to not strum it. There's a couple different ways we can do this. One is we can actually directionalize our strum a little bit away so that we don't hit the A string. The other is we can just release the pressure ever so slightly on that A string so it mutes it. Whatever you need to do to create that sound, it's going to be a down there. And then we're going to come up, raising the pressure completely off so that the A string can be open. I think this is the hardest part of the tune. It's just tricky and feels awkward to put the fingers in this different way. But practicing 14 on its own can be really beneficial. And if I make these movements really slow, it's going to go something like this. Again there, down, up, right? So just practice it nice and slow. And as you build up the speed, eventually it'll sound something like this in time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the pair of measures here, 13 and 14, should sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Going into measures 15 and 16 here, 15 is going to be that G chord. Now, the way we're playing this G chord, we want to actually be using that bar because we just came off of that, right? So keep the bar there across the C, E, and A strings with the index finger and the middle finger here on 3 of the E. We're going to do a triplet, or we're going to do the first 2 strums of a triplet, the down and down. But then on the up of the triplet, we're going to add this ring finger on 3 of the A string. So it goes... And then on the next down, we're going to bar all the way across 2 for this little D chord. So remember how we played the D chord before with that finger off? Well, we're going to do the same thing, but the finger's just going to be on here. And we're going to do a down strum on that. And we're going to follow that by up, open on the A string. So this is a really spicy measure. Looks like this really, really, really slow. I think this is probably the hardest measure of the whole tune. It's definitely up there. In time, it should sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Going into the 16th measure, we go back to that G chord with the index finger barred across the C, E, and A and the middle finger here on 3 of the E, but we need to mute the A string. Just like we did at the middle or the back end of measure 14, same deal here. We're going to do a down strum on that. And then here's what's cool. We do another down strum before repeating and going all the way back to the beginning of the tune. So measure 16 in time should sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the 2 measures together, 15 and 16, should sound something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At this point, it actually repeats and it goes back to the beginning of the song. And we just play through again, the whole thing as we have been doing. Going down to 9. Now we're at 13. But now instead of going back to 16, which was our first ending, we go to measure 17 to finish the song. And 17, not so bad. We're going to hit that same G chord with the muted A string, right? Same deal we did before. And then we're going to end the tune by sliding up to one of my all-time favorite G chords on the ukulele. Middle finger here on the 11th fret of the C string, index on the E and A 10th fret. Strike through all 4 to give you that big, beautiful, bright G chord to end the whole thing. And so that's going to sound something like this. Measure 17 in time, nice and simple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that finishes this tune. I'm going to bring the camera back up. This is a really wonderful exercise for getting comfortable with the triplet strum. Again, it feels like doing this a lot of the time through the tune. It took me some practice to get comfortable to do the performance of this one because I had to make sure that my muscle memory was correct as I was going through. When you try to play this intuitively, sometimes you end up with your hand in the wrong spot at the wrong time because you're trying to do a down where you should have done an up or vice versa. So it's really important to follow the strum markings on this tab that show you the down, down, and up for the triplets, and then just downs and ups for the other sections. It's challenging, but with practice, you'll get it, and it's a lot of fun. It kind of flows off the fingers as you get comfortable with it. So, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time on the next lesson here on Rock Class 101. Thanks so much.
All right, guys, so this week's ukulele lesson was a lot of fun. This is a classic Thanksgiving tune and a melody that is just a joy to play on the ukulele, especially with the triplet strum technique that Matt uses throughout this arrangement. So I do want to give you a friendly reminder before we wrap up that if you did want to get the tabs to print off and keep for your records, that was available at this link right here. Or you can go to the site rockclass101.com, do a search for the song's name. Don't forget too, on that page was the really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer. This feature allows you to hit play, watch the tab scroll across in real time, highlight bars, loop sections, slow it down, all that fun jazz. So guys, again, I hope you enjoyed learning this tune, and we will catch you in the next lesson. Take care.